Hello watch enthusiasts and welcome to Watch Chronicler. Over the last few years, the struggle to remain relevant and forward-looking has resulted in some of the most high-tech watches ever produced. These offer longer power reserves, new anti-magnetic components, and a consistent level of accuracy which was never previously available in all but the most expensive of chronometers. For the most part, this has been achieved by Swiss manufacturers through two means: movement modification and in-house or bespoke production. For a brand like Tudor, a brand which, let's not forget, has the industrial might of Rolex behind it, or Horage, a brand keen on supplying movements to others in the industry, producing a brand new bespoke movement designed to offer future options was really a no-brainer. However, as Oris has no doubt noticed with its new caliber 400 and its time-setting issues, producing a new movement is one thing, but making a well-tested and reliable one is an altogether different proposition. But there is, of course, another direction which a brand can go: the development of existing movements and technology. This direction provides the advantage of assured reliability for all untouched components and the opportunity to save money by adding only specific complications or functions. Of course, these modifications can take many forms, including practical additions such as a chronograph module, or a functional enhancement such as a column wheel added to a chronograph or silicon components added for anti-magnetism. The extreme, you could say, would be Omega's addition of a coaxial escapement to the ETA 2892-2 to create the caliber 2500. But let's put all these stories of untold innovation in the face of a limited budget to one side, because frankly there is one component which is at once crucial to this equation, but which I think you'll agree has a confusing relationship with public opinion: the ETA movement. On the one hand, many people will actively choose to pay more for an ETA movement instead of a Sellita or STP piece, which is technically similar, citing reliability and quality as their rationale for this choice. On the other hand, many will turn down a superbly prepared ETA movement, even when priced correctly, as it's not original or special enough for their watch of choice. Now, I myself have made the very same arguments, yet in today's episode I'd like to explain just why we should respect the ETA movement in its two most common forms, the ETA 2824 and ETA 2892. But I should first address what ETA actually is. ETA is the largest movement manufacturer in Switzerland and supplies countless brands inside and outside the country. With a range of movements, each with popularity defined by prevailing trends in case sizes, manual or automatic winding, and price levels, ETA has an immense range available. In fact, as part of the Swatch group, they also produce entirely bespoke movements for Longines and Omega, amongst other brands in fact, with their own specific requirements and demands. But how did ETA come to exist? Well, I'll provide you with an abridged but I hope helpful history. ETA, or its predecessor, was formed out of necessity due to the ups and downs of the Swiss watch industry in the early 20th century. To briefly summarise, the disconnect between watch manufacturers and movement component producers, a sector which I should note swiftly rushed to produce more profitable military equipment during the First World War, and subsequently created an immense surge of components when that war eventually finished, resulted in a crisis as movements or most of their components were sold within and outside Switzerland for cut prices just to balance the books due to this enormous surge in components. When coupled with the well-known economic strains of the late 20s, it was rather obvious that some industry regulation was going to be required. From this need came GmbH+CO, S.p.A, deriving its name from the basic, almost complete movements sold to watch manufacturers by movement makers. This organisation united movement makers in 1926 to generate some stability in the field, whilst ASUAG or ASWAG from here on, an organisation partially established by the Swiss government and by Swiss banks as an umbrella organisation comprising multiple brands and indeed protecting them, was established in 1931. It was with these two organisations that ETA was formed because Eterna, a Swiss brand known for both watches and movements, had to divide itself into Eterna for watches and ETA for movements in order to simultaneously join these two organisations. From here, ETA's path was guided by a streamlining of movement production by GmbH+CO, with ETA being directed to produce automatic movements specifically. But now I think we should turn our attention to two key movements which you'll probably be familiar with: the ETA 2824, ETA's current workhorse movement, but one which hasn't always been thus, and the ETA 2892, a movement which deserves a lot more respect as a truly refined piece of engineering. The ETA 2824 was launched in the early 1970s as an evolution of the Eterna caliber 1427, a movement which, when launched in 1955, was one of the very thinnest automatics on the market, at 25.6mm wide by 4.6mm thick, essentially the same dimensions as a modern ETA 2824. As a consequence of the Eterna connection, this movement had some very distinctive elements, such as the use of the 5 ball bearings to support the automatic rotor, an important innovation which arrived in 1948 and was so successful that it became Eterna's logo to the present day. Previous movements before the 2824, such as the ETA 2700 series from the late 60s, didn't offer these ball bearings, as these were reserved purely for Eterna's watches at the time, and so other movements simply supported the rotor with the axle to which it was connected. As a design, the 2824 is just one of many variations on a particular format. The most basic would be the ETA 2800, a movement no longer produced, which removed automatic winding altogether, whilst the ETA 2837 was the most complex, with the day, the date, and a high beat rate of 36,000 vibrations per hour. This movement reached, in essence, its modern form in the very early 1980s as a well-proven piece of robust engineering. As a family, these movements have gained a reputation for being reliable and easy to service, although it is possible that this is a pure consequence of just how many have been produced over the years. But let's pause for a second with the basic 2824. This is a movement which, for better or for worse, is the most likely to be the one in the mechanical watch on your wrist. From plain standard grade examples with no decoration to a stunningly prepared chronometer piece, the same basic underpinnings remain. It is, after all, a movement which can trace its background and its key innovations to a brand which contributed immeasurably to the automatic watch movement and still includes some of the most clever innovations of the mid-20th century, from the automatic reversers to those ball bearings I mentioned in the rotor. In fact, it was with the ETA 2824 that hacking from the crown in order to stop the seconds and allow more accurate setting of the timepiece became a more widespread solution in the Swiss watch industry and has become something which today people expect from movements at all price ranges. Of course, this wasn't purely down to the ETA 2824, but certainly this movement played a very large role in this change of opinion. Today, ETA's portfolio of movements in this range has shrunk somewhat, with no real interest beyond the ubiquitous and I reckon most sensible beat rate of 28,800 vibrations per hour, or 8 ticks per second, a reasonable balance of refinement and power reserve. However, what they have added to the range are seriously impressive developments to this classic movement. You see, ETA seem to have decided that the perfect price range for the 2824 is in the sub £1,500 area. Here, perfect finishing isn't the most important aspect, but instead Swatch-owned brands such as Hamilton, Tissot and Certina have been given an unprecedented opportunity, a basic movement to which they can bolt new and impressive technology. Take Hamilton, for example. They've enormously increased the enjoyment one can get from their historic khaki field mechanical and its manual movement by extending the power reserve to 80 hours from 38 by reducing the beat rate to 3 Hz. It's a simple change, and one of several in the H50 movement, but an effective one too, and well judged for the market they're selling to. The same has been seen from Tissot, who, in addition to retaining automatic winding, have added a silicon spring for anti-magnetism. Quite honestly, the ETA 2824 deserves respect not only as a brilliant piece of watch history, but as a spectacularly variable piece of engineering, and a very practical one for most people. But the ETA 2824 is not flawless. In fact, its relative age has some serious drawbacks. The clever reversers which enable bidirectional winding are notorious for breaking or seizing to result in automatic winding failure, whilst the narrow central bearing for the automatic winding rotor does have a tendency to wear out and allow the rotor to smack the movement surface. In truth, the movement I believe is the triumph of ETA is the ETA 2892A2, or simply 2892 as we usually know it. Launched in 1975, this movement was designed to accommodate much thinner cases than the ETA 2824 and followed a very different philosophy to achieve a 3.6mm thickness. The ETA 2892 was developed from the Eterna 1466, as seen in the Eterna Matic 3000, the thinnest full-rotor automatic movement at the time with the date. Of course, a lot changed from that 1962 movement, with the beat rate increased to 4 Hz from 2.5 Hz, and the movement diameter being reduced ever so slightly. Crucially, the movement was considerably wider and featured 7 ball bearings on a wider and more stable rotor bearing. Upon release, this didn't seem to be designed to be much of an upgrade over the ETA 2824 beyond fitting different cases. Ironically though, the development of this movement as a consequence of market trends and changes created one of the best movements on the market even 45 years later. You see, in the early 1980s, the 2892 was re-engineered as the 2892-2 and was reduced in width to match the 2824, but with the cost of a worsened winding efficiency. Nevertheless, ETA persisted amidst a Swatch Group-driven revival of the watch industry, the owner of ETA by the way. What was, in essence, being asked of the ETA 2892 as a new objective was to be a thin, high-end automatic movement for the 1990s and 2000s. ETA responded with the 2892A2, a comprehensive upgrade. Fundamentally revised, this movement had a redesigned rotor and more efficient automatic winding to previous generations. Meanwhile, with tighter tolerances, a bump in quality, and preparation essentially for being used as a chronometer, the 2892A2 actually redirected the watch market, you could say. Take the Omega Seamaster 300M from the 90s, a watch I'm very fond of. This watch, with its high water resistance and pairing of suave design and obvious toughness, was only really possible because of that 2892A2 and the fact that it could be converted into the Omega 1120, a reliable and very accurate piece for a slim but tough watch. Today, the ETA 2892A2, hereafter referred to simply as the 2892, seems almost misappropriated, being used as both ETA's movement of choice for high-end and particularly small-scale production watches, and a thin choice in, for instance, a Breitling, when an in-house caliber will be too bulky for that particular application. Perhaps its most impressive use at present is in Longines' work, another case of a Swatch brand extracting the very best of the group's resources. Their development of this movement not only makes similar changes as seen on Tissot's 2824 with the enhanced spring and the reduced beat rate, but also has been prepared so well as a chronometer that winding it, setting the time or setting the date, it feels as refined as you could ever imagine on a watch costing 4 or 5 times the price. Nevertheless, the most extreme modification would have to be the Omega 2500D, the point at which Omega had to accept that if it wanted to add more than just a coaxial escapement, it was going to have to go in-house. Nevertheless, the D variant of this movement demonstrated, in a thoroughly revised form with extensive decoration, a screwed balance wheel, and of course the coaxial escapement, that ETA, alongside the success of the 2824, had created another marvel of versatility and quality with the 2892, and not the highly strung drama queen we expect of an ultra-thin movement. But what do you think of these famous ETA movements? Have they earned greater respect for you, or would you still regard them as underdeveloped by comparison to more recent movement options? Perhaps the answer here is obvious and the question is unfair, yet I'm sure that they still deserve respect as truly revolutionary pieces of watchmaking, or even simply as movements which have endured the test of time superbly well. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe and hit the bell icon to always know about all new videos here on YouTube. Thank you very much for watching. This is Armon from WatchChronicler.com. Out.